Mark is 44 years old. He's got a decent job, a house he's still paying off, 2 kids who eat a suspicious amount of food for their size, and a 401k he set up in his early 30s that he mostly tries not to think about. Last Tuesday, Mark was eating lunch at his desk and he saw a headline: Average retirement savings for Americans in their mid-40s. He clicked it. He did the math. And for exactly 4 seconds, he felt fine. Better than fine, actually. He felt ahead. Because the number he saw, the one the article called average, was lower than what Mark had saved. Not by a lot, but lower. And in that moment, 4 seconds of genuine, warm relief washed over him. Then he kept reading. And now, Mark is staring at his monitor, lunch going cold, wondering how a number that was supposed to make feel better somehow made everything worse. Welcome to Dollar Blind. And in the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you exactly what happened to Mark, and why the retirement savings number you've probably seen floating around the internet is one of the most misleading statistics in personal finance. I'm going to show you what the real benchmark is, why so many Americans miss it, and, most importantly, what you can actually do about it if you're sitting somewhere close to where Mark is sitting right now. Because here's the thing, the number isn't lying to be cruel, it's lying because of how math works. And once you understand that, the shame lifts a little. Maybe a lot. Let's get into it. So, what number did Mark see? According to the Federal Reserve's most recent survey of consumer finances, the average retirement savings for Americans between the ages of 45 and 54 is somewhere in the neighborhood of $313,000. That's the number that gets passed around. That's the number that ends up in headlines. That's the number that gave Mark 4 seconds of relief. And here's why it's almost completely useless to you. That number is a mean average, which sounds fancy, but all it means is this: add up every retirement account balance in America for people in that age range, divide by the number of people, and that's your average. Simple math. The problem is that simple math, when applied to wealth, produces absurd results. Here's a quick example. Let's say you've got 10 people in a room. 9 of them have $10,000 saved for retirement. One of them, let's call him Gerald, has $3 million saved because Gerald sold a business in his 40s and has been golfing ever since. What's the average retirement savings in that room? You add it up. 9 people at $10,000 each is $90,000. Gerald brings $3 million. Total is $3,090,000. Divide by 10 people. Your average is $309,000. But 9 out of 10 people in that room have $10,000, not $309,000. That's what a mean average does when wealth is involved. A small number of people with enormous balances pull the entire number upward, dragging the average into a range that most people never come close to. It's like averaging Jeff Bezos and a raccoon and calling the result a typical mammal's net worth. This is not a secret. Statisticians have known this for decades, but it keeps showing up in financial headlines because it's the number that makes people feel okay. And people who feel okay don't click as many ads. So Mark's relief wasn't based on nothing. He genuinely was above the mean average. But the mean average tells you almost nothing about where most people actually stand. For that, you need a different number entirely. The number you actually want is the median. The median is the middle. Line up every American in their mid-40s by retirement savings, from the person with 0 to Gerald with his $3 million, and find the person standing exactly in the center of that line. What they have saved is the median. It tells you what a genuinely typical American has, not what happens when you mix regular people's balances with the ultra-wealthy. And the median retirement savings for Americans aged 45 to 54? About $87,000, not $313,000. $87,000. I want you to pause the video right now. Seriously. Close the comments, ignore your phone, and ask yourself, where do I actually land compared to $87,000? Not compared to what you thought the number was, not compared to what you hoped. Where do you actually stand? Because $87,000 at 45 is a very different starting point than $313,000. And most of the people watching this video, if they're being honest with themselves, are somewhere in the range of that $87,000 median. Maybe a little above, maybe a little below, but in that territory. And here's where I want to be genuinely clear with you. Being near the median is not a moral failure. The median is where most people are. That's literally what median means. If you're close to $87,000 at 45, you are not a disaster. You are not uniquely irresponsible. You are, in the most literal statistical sense, normal. But normal, in this case, is not enough. And if you think that's where the bad news ends, buckle up. Here's the thing about the median. It tells you where most people are. It does not tell you where you need to be. Those are two completely different questions, and confusing them is the second trap, the one that catches the people who already figured out the first one. If you're 45 and you're behind, here are 3 things, in order of priority, that actually move the needle. Not inspiration, not vague advice about cutting lattes, actual mechanics. Some frameworks push that to 4 times. Let's use 3, because I want to be fair to where most people realistically start. If you make $80,000 a year, 3 times your salary is $240,000. If you make $100,000 a year, it's $300,000. If you make $120,000 a year, it's $360,000. Compare those numbers to the median of $87,000. That gap, the distance between where most Americans actually are and where most Americans need to be, is not a small rounding error. It's a crater. Let's go back to Mark. Mark makes $95,000 a year. By the 3 times salary benchmark, he should have around $285,000 saved at 44. He has $94,000, slightly above the median, slightly above what he thought the average was, and about $191,000 short of where he actually needs to be. 4 seconds of relief. Then this. Mark is not unusual. Mark is everywhere. Mark is, statistically speaking, most of us. And the reason Mark ended up here is not because Mark is bad with money. It's because the system Mark was dropped into made this outcome almost inevitable. Let me give you some quick context, because this is the part that usually makes people feel better. Not because the situation improves, but because you understand why you're in it. For most of the 20th century, if you worked for a decent employer for 30 years, you retired with a pension, a defined benefit, a guaranteed monthly check, paid until you died, funded by your employer, you didn't have to manage it, you didn't have to invest it correctly, you just had to show up. In the 1980s, that started changing. Companies discovered they could move retirement risk off their own books and onto yours. The 401k, which was originally designed as a supplemental savings tool, not a primary retirement vehicle, became the default. And suddenly, tens of millions of American workers who had never been asked to be their own investment managers were their own investment managers. Most of them were not ready for that. And that's before we get to wages. Real wages, wages adjusted for inflation, for American workers in the bottom half of the income distribution have barely moved in 40 years. The cost of housing has tripled in many markets. Healthcare costs have increased faster than inflation for decades. Childcare, which didn't used to eat 20% of a family's income, now does in many cities. You take stagnant wages, stack on top of them an explosion in fixed costs, add a retirement system that requires individuals to make sophisticated investment decisions with money they barely have to spare, and you get an $87,000 median. You get Mark. If you're 45 and you're behind, here are 3 things, in order of priority, that actually move the needle. Not inspiration, not vague advice about cutting lattes, actual mechanics. Step 1. Max out your catch-up contributions. If you are 50 or older, the IRS lets you contribute more to your 401k than younger workers. In 2025, the standard 401k contribution limit is $23,500, but if you're 50 or older, you can contribute an additional $7,500 on top of that, bringing your total to $31,000 per year. That's called the catch-up contribution. Even if you can't hit the full limit, and most people can't, increase your contribution rate by even 2 percentage points right now, today. Don't wait until the new year. 2 percentage points compounds in ways that will surprise you 5 years from now. Step 2. Eliminate your highest interest debt before anything else. I know this sounds counterintuitive when we're talking about retirement savings, but hear me out. If you are carrying a credit card balance at 22% interest, that balance is working against your retirement. You are not going to outperform 22% in the stock market reliably. No one is. The math is simple. Paying off a 22% debt is the same as earning a guaranteed 22% return. You will not find that in any index fund. Step 3. Know your actual retirement number. This is the one most people skip because it feels scary to calculate. But vague anxiety is worse than a hard number, even a hard number you're behind on. Here's a simple way to estimate it. Take the annual income you want in retirement, let's say $60,000 a year. Divide that by 0.04. That's the 4% rule, which we can argue about another day, but it's a reasonable starting estimate. $60,000 divided by 0.04 gives you $1,500,000. That's your retirement target. Now subtract what you expect from Social Security. You can look this up at ssa.gov. There's a tool there that estimates your monthly benefit based on your earnings history. Let's say that's $18,000 a year. That means your investments need to cover $42,000 a year. $42,000 divided by 0.04 is $1,050,000. That's your actual investment target. Write that number down, put it somewhere you'll see it. Not because the gap will feel good, it probably won't, but because a target you know about is one you can actually aim at. A gap you don't measure is just dread. Mark does all 3 of these things. He increases his 401k contribution by 3%. He transfers his one remaining credit card balance to a zero-interest card and sets up automatic payments to clear it in 18 months. And he calculates his actual retirement number for the first time. His lunch is very cold by this point, but something has shifted. Not fixed. Shifted. Which, at 44, with 20-plus years of compounding still ahead of him, is more than enough to work with. Here's what I want you to leave this video with. Being behind at 45 is not the same as being finished at 45. The math on compounding doesn't stop working because you wish you'd started earlier. It keeps working with whatever you put in, starting whenever you actually start. Later is worse than earlier, yes, but later is infinitely better than never. Comfortable lies keep you where you are. Uncomfortable truths give you something to push against. You now have the real numbers. You have 3 specific moves. You know why you're in this position, and it's not entirely your fault, and it's also not entirely outside your control. That's actually a lot. If this video helped you see something more clearly, subscribe, because this is what we do here. Uncomfortable truths give you something to push against. You now have the real numbers. You have 3 specific moves. You know why you're in this position, and it's not entirely your fault, and it's also not entirely outside your control. That's actually a lot. If this video helped you see something more clearly, subscribe, because this is what we do here. Every video, real numbers, real mechanics, no sugarcoating, and no shame. And if you want to go deeper on one of the pieces we covered today, the 4% rule, catch-up contributions, or how to actually read your Social Security statement, I've got videos on all of those, and I'll link them below. Mark's lunch was cold, but Mark's next 20 years just got a lot more intentional. See you in the next one.